it's a tough industry to sell into just because the sales cycles are long. Insurance is slow to change, financial services in general, and you're dealing with, mega Fortune 50 or Fortune 500 companies that have a lot of red tape, slow to adopt. And, this is something that they didn't know that they needed at the time, right? Like nobody wakes up in the middle of the night saying, man, I wish I could read digital body language. It's a net new solution. But once they have it, I kind of kid, it's like having HD TV. Once they have it, it's hard to imagine going back to standard definition.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Woody Klemmer. He's the head of growth at ForMotiv. Woody, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Woody, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'll keep this as brief as possible. You already mentioned, but I'm Woody Klemmer. I'm the head of growth with ForMotiv. I am calling in from Boston, Massachusetts. I've been in the entrepreneurial space my entire professional career since I was actually probably pre-professional. Back when I was in middle school was when I started my first business, and have had a series of businesses since then. I started basically an on-demand odd job, like an on-demand staffing company in high school, and then did it through college. And after college, we ended up selling that company to a company in Philadelphia. So I moved down to Philadelphia and had a 2-year period with the acquiring company before I met my current partners that were getting ForMotiv off the ground. And I joined them back in like early 2019. So crazy to say, but creeping up on 5 years with ForMotiv. And we've grown quite a bit since the 3 of us or 4 of us at the time. And happy to tell you a little bit more about that if that's where the conversation goes.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about ForMotiv and what you do?
Yeah, so ForMotiv, we say what we do is called behavioral data science. It's basically a bridge between real-time data science, real-time machine learning, and behavioral analytics. So we help insurance carriers basically figure out the intent of the applicants that are filling out digital applications. So if you were to have filled out, I was actually on Geico earlier today, but if you were to fill out a, auto policy or a life policy, what we do is analyze how you actually physically fill out the policy. Like, where do you move your mouse and how long do you take before answering a question? And did you hesitate and then change an answer or get a quote and then go back and edit some information? And we can predict both your purchase intent, so how likely are you to actually buy a policy, and the truthfulness of your answers. So we help carriers basically drive the best action for the individual user that is applying for a policy, whether that's making sure that they get one and removing friction, or further qualifying them and trying to lower their risk exposure.
Wow. So, when you're talking about the behavioral analytics, is it only within kind of like you said, auto? Is it home, life, other kind of insurance as well?
All of the above.
Oh, nice. Okay,
All
sweet.
of the above. We work with, in the P&C space, so auto, home, renters, et cetera, we work with, I think it's 5 or 6 of the top 10 P&C carriers. And then we have a similar client list on the life side. But basically, as more and more carriers start, it's called digital distribution. And as they try to accelerate as many people as they can, they're trying to figure out how do you do that without increasing risk. And we help them do both. We help them sell more policies, just to cut right to it, but also sell more policies while maintaining profitability and lowering risk and fraud and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was just about to ask how people are able to leverage that data, because I imagine there's an immense amount of data that you're able to collect from these behavioral analytics. So like you said, it sounds like kind of preventing loss while still providing the best kind of service in the insurance space. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. And the way that they actually get the data, it's a really simple, just not to get too technical, but JavaScript integration. It's like installing Google Analytics. There's probably a little more to it than that, but relatively simple. And then we're capturing, hundreds of features. A feature would be mouse movement, hesitation, typing speed, how long between keys, things of that nature. And then we're capturing thousands, if not tens of thousands of data points that they can leverage real time. So we have a bunch of different solutions that they can access real time. Things like, premium leakage in the auto space, for instance, which would be, you have an 18-year-old kid with an accident, you go through and you get a quote and you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea my policy would be that expensive. And you conveniently remove he or she from the policy, and all of a sudden your rate's a lot better. So, or in the life space, the one everybody loves is smoker's amnesia. Have you smoked in the last 12 months? And they say yes, and they start filling out the drop-down questions. And then ultimately they forget that they smoke and they press no. We can capture what we call digital body language. So we actually read the digital behavior, and then we can provide these real-time insights so that they can say, okay, in the event that maybe this person is manipulating the policy, let's make sure we're running the appropriate data checks or passing them off to an underwriter for manual review and things like that.
Wow, that's really interesting. Talk to me about some of the strategies that ForMotiv has been able to use to really grow and expand. Because I think you said 2019 is when you guys really were cooking with some heat. So talk to me about that, the strategies for growth that you guys have expanded on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough industry to sell into just because the sales cycles are long. Insurance is slow to change, financial services in general, and you're dealing with mega Fortune 50 or Fortune 500 companies that have a lot of red tape, slow to adopt. And, this is something that they didn't know that they needed at the time, right? Like nobody wakes up in the middle of the night saying, man, I wish I could read digital body language. It's a net new solution. But once they have it, I kind of kid, it's like having HD TV. Once they have it, it's hard to imagine going back to standard definition. So the early days was just a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of, I like to say in the entrepreneurial world, you have to turn the flywheel, and it's really, really tough in the beginning. We don't have an Instagram product that can just go viral. It was a lot of emails, a lot of LinkedIn messages, a lot of conferences, a lot of getting in front of people and learning from them on what's the best way to break into these industries, or into these companies. And then from there, slowly you get your first win, and you use that to get your second win, and then your third and your fourth. And before you know it, the flywheel is turning a little bit easier because we've got data, we've got proof points. We can move from this being a hypothesis of we think this is predictive and we think this is going to matter to, oh, wow, this really does matter more than we thought it would. And it's highly predictive. We're seeing really good results. We've got big clients that we can leverage to continue to develop the product. And so it's just continued to build on itself. I certainly wouldn't say there's a silver bullet. Somebody told me right when we started, I interviewed a guy who's been in the industry for a long time and has a super successful company. And he said, be prepared to make money as slowly as possible, because that's what tends to happen for these insurtech businesses. So, slow and steady wins the race. We prefer to have managed growth, and it's allowed us to really hone the product, develop new features and solutions, and really add value as quickly as we possibly can for the customers that we are signing up, so that, ideally we sign them up, they never leave.
And when you're talking about your customers, do you tend to see trends in the size of the companies? I know you mentioned some like enterprise size. So what do those trends look like?
Yeah, so it was advantageous for us to go after big companies, because the more data that we had to continue to train our models and develop new solutions with, the better. Now, the trade-off is it takes a lot longer to get into those companies. So we had a dual approach where we went after a lot of insurtechs, the startups that had big funding and had these crazy valuations, and we got in because they move quicker. The trade-off there is they tend to want to do it themselves. But we would get in the door, we would start working with them. And then obviously the market had a really tough turn back in 2021, let's call it. And a lot of those companies had to cut funding. Their stock prices went down, 90, 95%, if not more. They had to really tighten up. So we decided these other companies, the big companies, they've been around for 100, almost 200 years in some cases. They've seen a market downturn before, and they've survived and they've thrived since then. So let's continue to go after the big companies because it helps us then be able to get the mid-market and the smaller companies, because now we have solutions that we can say, no matter what size you are, we can add value day one. Versus if we had gone the other way and said, let's just go after the small fish, it would have taken us a lot longer to build the data set that we needed to create the solutions we needed to add the value we needed. So going top down has been, I think, a good approach for us. And we're continuing to knock down the top 10 carriers. Those aren't our only clients. We have clients that are doing a couple thousand applications a month and a couple that are doing, a couple million a month. So it really runs the gamut.
Yeah, really interesting. So, when you're going after these clients and customers, what are some of the ways that ForMotiv is really able to stand out from its competition?
I don't like saying this, but we don't have a ton. Our biggest competitor, let me put it this way, is usually internal teams. It's less they're going out with like an RFP and saying, hey, this is the solution that we want. We want you all to bid on it. We don't run into that nearly as much as, hey, here's what you're doing. This is where we think we can complement it or add net new. And then it's a battle of priority, funding, bandwidth. It's really convincing them that of the 50 other priorities that you have, this premium leakage or misrep or non-disclosure or, these conversion solutions that we have are more important. So you need to put resources, time, energy, and effort into these versus what you're doing internally. That's been a challenge for some carriers because, I call it food, shelter, water, but basically if they can't underwrite digitally, they can't use our platform, right? Or our product. So first they need to do that. They need to take care of the bare necessities for them in a digital world. Then they can move on to solutions that enhance it like ours. And so then, when you think really about just what we're doing, we're really the only ones doing this. We're the only ones focused on insurance. There are other behavioral analytics companies out there. There are marketing technology or MarTech solutions that are out there that I would say in the Venn diagram of capability, there's certainly overlaps if you were to really look hard, but we're the only ones in the world right now that are focused on insurance, that were built for insurance, that were built for accelerated underwriting and digital distribution. We've trained our data set based off insurance. So it's not some general data set that they're using. It's very targeted towards the industry. It's very specific. All of our solutions are built for insurance. So we feel pretty confident that if they're bought in on, hey, we need behavioral data, we want this real-time intent data, we want to be able to drive real-time action, ForMotiv is the answer for them. It just then goes back to, okay, now we need to fund it, we need to integrate it, we need to leverage it, we need buy-in from our customers, because it's not so much a set it and forget it. There is, you got to go and take the action, and in order to get the most out of it, you have to put in some effort on your end. So we've been pretty lucky that our customer base is incredibly sophisticated and willing to do the work and put in the effort to see the results that they are. And, the ROI for them has been huge. So it's been a really good partnership on both sides.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate kind of what you're saying is, it goes both ways, that, the ForMotiv can only do so much, but the company's got to meet you at part of the way too, to continue to further their own growth. So I appreciate your insight on that. And, Woody, kind of picking your brain, obviously you're head of growth. So talk to me, is there anything coming down the line, plans for growth, kind of scaling as we go into the future?
Yeah, always. So we've made a huge point or emphasis in the last year of adding value as quickly as possible. So ideally, we want to add value day one. If you had talked to us 4 years ago, so much of what it was, okay, let's integrate, then we'll capture some data, then we'll train a model, or we'll try to come up with what's valuable for you. And you're talking months of lag time before we can have anything that they'll say, okay, this is cool, let's use this. Then you have to integrate it. Then you know what I mean? So there was a period of buy-in that we needed from our customers before they were starting to see ROI. We've processed over 1 billion applications at this point, and we looked across our auto carriers, for instance, and our life carriers, and we said there's a lot of similarity between carriers of what we're seeing from a data, what behaviors we see that are indicative of non-disclosure for a life person, for instance, or premium leakage for an auto carrier. And now we've built a solution where we can say, day one, we're going to look at these 12, 15, 24, whatever it is, behaviors, and be able to tell you so you can take action really, really quickly and start to see ROI really quickly. We're going to continue to do that. So we see avenues across the enterprise that we think we can add value in. We think we can expand, primarily right now, we usually start in auto because the volume is so big, but home, renters, we're now doing commercial insurance, workers' comp, on the life side. There's a lot of expansion inside of the insurance industry before we'd ever even think about going into different verticals. So we think we can build a very big business just inside of insurance if we continue to add value, expand into different product lines, and add new solutions that will grow, where we can be in the enterprise.
It sounds like you're taking a truly customer-centric approach, but really working to build that trust right out of the gate so that they know, hey, we're going to trust ForMotiv to really take us to that next level. They're trusting, their business and you.
I would say 100%, and I can shout out our, account management, data science, and engineering teams. They're so responsive. I can't tell you how many of our clients have told us that and said, we've never worked with a vendor that's this responsive. Hey, we just noticed this in the data. Can you spin this up for us? And within 24 hours, it's out the door. That's also the benefit of working with a company of our size is we're incredibly hands-on. You don't just get put in the queue and set it and forget it. As I said earlier, it's really collaborative. We're learning as much from them as they are from us. And, we get really positive feedback from them on our ability to add value, enhance what they're trying to do, come up with net new things. Because a lot of the times they'll say, what do you suggest? What are other people doing? How can we try to get creative in ways that maybe we hadn't thought of? So we've been able to do that. And, you'll see the Slack channels that we have that are mutual with our clients where they're in Slack and we're in Slack and they're going all day and coming up with new stuff. So it's actually, I'm not super technical, so I don't know what half of the stuff that they're talking about is, but I can just see by the responses and the camaraderie that it's, they're very excited. We had someone say the other day, they've never seen so much buzz for a new vendor as they have with ForMotiv, which we were, it was really cool to hear.
That's a great compliment. That's terrific. Well, Woody, as we start to wrap up this conversation, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more about common misconceptions. I think that, there's a lot of misinformation out there, really in every industry. But I imagine, like you said, the beginning kind of stages of ForMotiv were getting in front of people and doing that brand awareness. So I'm curious, kind of building off of that, is a common misconception that people necessarily don't understand how to leverage the data that ForMotiv provides?
Common misconception specific to ForMotiv or just generally like growing or starting a business?
Both. Whatever comes to mind.
I think the latter is probably easier to answer, which goes back to what I said earlier around a lot of people go with if you build it, they will come, when they're first starting out a business. And I think that in 99.99999% of the examples, that doesn't happen. You'll get the 1 in a million or 1 in a billion. That's the Instagram that goes viral and a year later sells for $1 billion or whatever. I think in almost every other instance, there is so much more manual effort that goes into growing a business early on and figuring out where is the value that you add to a customer. So we had to learn that, not that we ever thought it was going to be easier or viral, but even, you put together projections and things like that, and they all get thrown out the window after the first 12 months. Anybody who started a company knows that. But with ForMotiv, I would say this sort of goes back to what I said earlier too, around, I think the misconception is that this has to be difficult to integrate. It has to be difficult to use. We're not going to see value for a long time. And if you talked to us 5 years ago, maybe some of those things were true, but today, relatively speaking, we can be up and running with a top 5 carrier in 2 weeks. They can be seeing value 10 days later, and they can be taking action on it a week after that. So call it 4 to 6 weeks from go live, they can start to really see value. And I think that's where we've started to see this uptick in growth and adoption has been just, okay, well, if my payback period can be that quickly, and we're talking about, the problems that we're looking at are multi tens of billions dollar problems, right? Premium leakage in the auto space is like when people manipulate those policies, it's a $30+ billion issue. So for us to be able to add value, especially with a carrier that's doing, hundreds of thousands or millions of apps a month, we don't have to do that much for them to start to see a huge return. And if we can really knock the cover off the ball, they can see a really, really big return. So I would say that was probably a misconception is in the beginning, does it work? Is it going to be predictive? We've proven all those things now. So again, we've moved from hypothesis to growth mode. And now we can say, integrate it. This is how long we estimate it'll take. Get going. This is when so we can really give them, we call it the behavioral roadmap, but this is what you can expect. And we wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago. Today, we can certainly do that. And we're doing it over and over again.
Fantastic. That's good growth. That's great. Well, Woody, as we start to wrap up this conversation, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be about ForMotiv, about, the industry in general, anything you want to leave our listeners with, advice?
Oh boy. Well, I guess shameless plug. If you're an insurance carrier and you're listening to this, we should definitely talk. But I don't know what kind of advice I have. I'm probably not the most suited to be giving advice, but I would say that I think if you focus on solving a real problem for a business, I think that's the other thing that a lot of companies that we've seen, if you build it, they will come. They're not really solving a problem. And it sounds so obvious because you hear it 100 times in every business school or podcast or YouTube video that you watch, but being a technology in search of a problem isn't nearly as good as a problem in search of a technology. And I think once we focused in on being solution oriented and really driving that this isn't just some new cool data set that you can use that's predictive and it's new and flashy and cool and no one's doing it. Once you get into, oh, hey, premium leakage is a $30 billion problem. We have a solution for that. Oh, you're trying to predict the purchase intent of your users. We have a solution for that that's real time, that allows you to create a dynamic experience that you're not currently doing. So being able to offer concrete solutions to concrete problems, I think has been the biggest benefit or the biggest, not change, but, as we've grown and we're now much more confident in our ability to add value, that's been really nice to have. And I know our sales team is incredibly appreciative of the work the other side of the house has put into arming us with, the ammunition needed to be able to go into these conversations and come out incredibly confident and knowledgeable with industry expertise and a lot of experience. So I know that was kind of rambly, but hopefully that
was
was
great.
helpful.
No, it was. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Well, Woody, I think this has been a terrific conversation. I really appreciate all your insights, the growth that ForMotiv has seen, the plans for the future. I think this was a great episode, and I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you having me.
Great to have you.